Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Darren Gallop. Darren, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thanks for having me.
So tell our audience a little bit about Darren Gallop.
Well, currently now I work in the cybersecurity space. My current startup, Securicy, is basically working to help small and medium-sized businesses build information security programs, deploy them, be able to report on that compliance or that security posture to their customers. Oddly enough, I haven't been in the security space my entire life. In fact, most of my career was actually in the music industry. So the security space I've been in now for about, I'd say 8 years part-time and about 4 full-time.
Well, I'm going to ask you a little bit about the kind of that transition here in a minute, but dig a little deeper. Family, background, experience. What kind of got you to this point?
Well, I grew up in Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, and
beautiful place.
Went to school in the French school system here and grew up bilingual.
Yeah.
Moved away as soon as I graduated, spent a lot of time in Montreal, Western Canada, in parts of Europe for a couple of years, and then decided that I was going to be a professional musician. So then I hit the road playing with a bunch of different bands, various different instruments over about an 8-year period. Learned a lot about the music business during that. Got a little tired of the road after a couple of years. It's a good, fun place, but it can be hard on
fun place to visit, but wouldn't want to live there.
Yeah, it can be hard on the mind and soul.
Yeah, exactly.
So then I got into the music industry, started a small record label, made a couple of records on that. Around the time when the record industry was really tanking, 2007, 2008. Jumped ship, jumped into a tech project, built a company called Mercado. That was basically a back-end management tool for music festivals, and we built that into being the back-end for Coachella and Burning Man and a bunch of different cultural and artistic type events. That was a real crazy ride. I don't have any kids. I'm married. My wife's also an entrepreneur. I live next to the water, and I like doing, well, not now because it'd be really cold to be in the water, but a couple of months a year up here that you can actually get in the water. I'm usually doing something in the water, whether it's canoeing or boating or surfing or swimming or something like that. Yeah.
So very interesting table talk at dinner time where you're comparing startup stories or, between you and your wife.
Yeah, it's funny, like she's in that stage, like she's just over a year into her business, I guess a year and a bit. And she's in that point where she's working all the time. I'm working quite a bit. So we typically do this like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then at some point around now or shortly hereafter, we have a breaking point. We'll go for a beer and start to, and then we'll take our weekends usually.
Yeah.
And hang
start
out.
to wind down.
Yeah. Wind down a little bit, take a rest, and then get ready to do it all again.
So instead of the 4-hour work week, it's more like the 4-day work week that you built with the Tim Ferriss philosophy.
We work Friday too, so I'd say I'm far from Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. I'd say probably the 55, 58-hour work week, but I'm loving what I'm doing right now, and things things are going really well right now. You know what it's like running a business. It's not always like it's not this thing. There's lots of ups and downs along the journey.
Yeah.
And feeling pretty good about everything right now. Things have been really good for us. So I'm really diving in, loving it.
If you weren't a .com in the early 2000s, it probably has never been just an upward hockey stick. So, I mean, everything's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
good, though. It's all part of it.
We walked through, kind of the early stage growing up, music scene. You said you went to Europe. I'm assuming you may have landed in France at some point in time. And then when you spoke French there, they're like going, what language are you speaking? Because it's this French Canadian version.
Yeah. No. And I have I have a weird, it is a thing. But you know what? The French people really like Canadians, especially French speaking Canadians.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, the old folks remember from the war and, there's a warm space, so they might make fun of the way we speak sometimes, but ultimately they do it in a loving manner for the most part.
And there, I can speak from experience. There's certainly a difference because my family lived in France for 3 years, and I would listen to, like, Quebecois radio, and I'm thinking, I really don't understand that nearly as clearly as I would understand somebody, say, from, Provence or somewhere, like, there was somewhere a little closer to where we were living.
Yeah, and I of course had the opposite experience. Yeah. And I spent, France. I spent some time in France. Spent some time in Ireland and in Spain, and Hungary actually is a place that I spent a good chunk of time as well. So I made some tracks around there. Just sort of being the 20 something. I kind of I was 2 years in university, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm just like partying. I'm just here because my mom told me I need to go, and you know what I mean, right?
I go to Europe and find myself.
I'm gonna go find myself, like as if I was hidden somewhere in the streets of Europe.
Exactly. Exactly. I feel your pain for sure. I think, I'm 57. I think there are days I want to go find myself even today. So I don't know if we ever outgrow that, but
yeah, no.
So walk us through the time, kind of the transition. I want you to tell the story, but it's your transition kind of into the cybersecurity space was almost out of necessity.
Yeah, you're totally right. So when we started off Mercado, which was in 2008, we were really focusing initially actually on touring musicians, which was really tough market to monetize. Poor bands that are driving around and beat up old bands paying for monthly
selling T-shirts.
In 2009 wasn't really. It was a little, not the right thing at the right time, I don't think. But we realized that we were in trouble. We were thinking about like what events, what things could we do that would be essentially being able to use the work we did, like shows and show itineraries and tech lists and riders and all this stuff that we were managing in this tool. And we had a local festival, Celtic Colors Festival here, which is a phenomenal Celtic music festival. And they were working on database solutions, and one of my co-founder actually had done some work with them beforehand. So we just started this idea of looking at, okay, what can we transition over? And we really made a pivot and just started focusing on events. And then we started like gaining all the local events, again, like smaller community events for like 2010, 2011 now, 2012. Right. And then we started like at around 2013, 2014, something kind of tipped, and we connected to like Bonnaroo and Coachella and X Games and Disney and Live Nation, like all these bigger brands, right? And then came, at that point, really, we were sort of like cowboys. We had this software that we sort of, did our best, but nobody on the team really had experience building a business or building like an actual enterprise grade platform, right, in the cloud. And go back to 2008, the resources for building a startup, a tech startup or a cloud-based app weren't as rich as they are now with all these accelerators and everything, right? So, once we broke into those bigger festivals, the questions started coming. They started looking at our infrastructure and asking us security questions. And of course, we weren't security people at all. So we were in situations where we had very tight periods of time that we had to meet very specific requirements from bigger customers. And in some case, we lost deals because we weren't ready. And you can't just go from like not thinking about security to like write code for 3 years and then like a magic wand tap your company and now you're ready to be ISO certified.
Poof, you're secure. That's right.
Yeah, like so you can't just, it's not a button you press, right? It's not an app you run, right? So we went through a lot of struggles. We hired consultants. We tried to hack out a lot of stuff ourselves because we were pretty bootstrapped. And over a period of time, we were able to build a fairly complete security program that also like was very custom to our small little, I think 13 or 14 person startup at the time. And we did a SOC 2 certification, which is essentially a certification of cybersecurity compliance. And it's generally something that was traditionally considered more of an enterprise grade security audit. So it was it wasn't very common that small software companies were doing that type of thing. And I felt like we came up with some really innovative ways to do that. Anyways, it became, now we were secure. We were closing these bigger deals. We started using it as our competitive advantage. Like we had these new startups popping up that didn't really figure out, they didn't come against these security challenges. So we were like, we're the secure, mature solution, right? And that's sort of where I started getting into it more, studying it more, like sort of building the way we were doing things so we could actually do them, and that it wouldn't be like invasive to people's workflows, and it would just like be a part of what we did. I was studying all these like Coursera's and different kinds of course, online courses that I was taking. And
Watching
then I did
YouTube videos, just
yeah,
anything.
like hey, we live in a great time. If you want to learn whatever you want to learn, it's
That's
all
right.
there. It's free. You don't
That's
need to pay
right.
anyone.
Hack
to teach
your own
you.
education. That's
Wonderful, right? Hack this stuff. And that's what I did. And then I was like, wow, it'd be great to have some sort of something to show that I did all this hard work to figure all this stuff out. And so I came across the ISC² and did what's called a CISSP, Certified Information System Security Professional, real mouthful. It's a certification that's really mainstream in the cybersecurity space.
Yeah.
It's a big study, big fat book that's really painful to memorize, all kinds of stuff that is pretty complicated. And you write an exam, and the exam's like 5 or 6 hours long, and it was the hardest test I've ever written in my life. In fact, like near the end of the test, I remember thinking, you know what? If I fail this, I'm just gonna not do it ever again.
That's right.
Move on and just say, hey, I tried.
That's right. I can go get a root canal at any time that I want to for this kind of pain. That's right.
Yeah. So, and I passed, which was awesome. And then, I posted that on my LinkedIn, and then I had all kinds of friends that were like, oh, dude, can we chat with you? Like, CTOs, CEOs, founders of companies, like, can we chat? Like, we're struggling. We got these security questionnaires coming in. And I kind of really saw it as like, wow, this is a thing. Like, the way security posture and security compliance works is you secure all your own stuff, but then you go to all your vendors and you got to make sure that, like, hey, is my my service provider, are they secure? Is my cleaning staff secure? Is the people that fix the computer secure? Are my consultants that I share data with, or do we have agreements? Are they secure? And it forces you, it kind of forces you to push those standards that you're bringing into your own business down into your own suppliers, right? So really just saw this massive opportunity, and we had built so much complex stuff at Mercado to solve so many unique problems in the festival space that I just felt like, I felt like I wanted to do something else. We knew the company was going to get acquired soon. There was conversations happening, and I was like pushing on 20 years of my life in the music industry. It was kind of like going to Coachella every year for free and having wicked passes sitting up front was awesome. But there was just a point where, like, I want to spend my summers like fly fishing or like hanging out at home, and like maybe in my 40s and my 50s, I'm not going to be that old rocker going to all these festivals. Right. And
your fingers don't even do this anymore, right?
I don't. No, I can't do that anymore. Unless I get drunk, then I might be able to pull it off. So, and I also like really started getting into the idea of building a business and scaling a business. And the problem with Mercado was it was a very tight niche market. And there wasn't an opportunity to build a massive company, right? Build a 100-person company or 200-person company in the niche we were in. We would have had to get into ticketing, which was already a bloodbath to some degree. So I just saw security as a really great opportunity, and saw ability to build a great big company and create a lot of jobs in my part of the world,
right,
where I think there's more need for tech employment. And I love it. I mean, I listen to music. If I turn the camera on, you'd see these giant studio monitors right here. There's like sound panels all around me. I've got congas right here, a drum kit over there. Like, that's this right. Is it's still a part of my life, a big part of my life, but in a different way. And I'm just having a great time building a company and really helping out startups. And I honestly feel like I know startups because I've run a startup for 10 years before starting Securicy. I never really ran a festival before. We were trying to help musicians until we found out the musicians didn't have any money, which we probably should have known in advance. But hey, sometimes you got to go.
Didn't do our market research, did we? That's right.
Yeah, market research, right?
Product market fit.
Customer have money.
Fit. That's right.
If no, move on to next idea.
That's right.
Yeah,
the decision tree said, "Does this customer have any money?" Yes. Continue. No. Try something else. That's right.
Pretty much.
By the way, that music riff is prodded free by Rising Tide Startups, just in the middle of the recording there. I want to ask you. You were talking about security, and you mentioned something that just really kind of sparked a question in my mind. This whole idea of just like, I mean, when we think about security within a company, we're thinking about almost an internal system that you're trying to secure. But as you were describing that, I mean, it's like this 42,000 armed octopus that extends in all directions. And security, I mean, it's kind of an old adage. I mean, security is only as good as the weakest link. And, just the whole idea of how extensive you have to be thinking in terms of security, like who has access, what information are you sending out? What are those channels? What are those APIs that you built? What are the, the holes that could be existing? What are people that are boring holes in your system? And I mean, just a multitude of things you've got to be thinking about. And it's a constantly changing field. I mean,
Correct.
it changes daily on things that you gotta kind of be wary of or kind of attack. So talk to us a little bit about this. I mean, it's a new industry, relatively new industry anyway, and just the rapidity of the change that you have to
Yeah.
deal with.
So, like I think of it, I think the common word is cybersecurity. That's what we think of, which sounds very digital and very technical.
Yeah.
The word I liked when I'm talking to a company and they're talking about building we call it information security generally, because what you're looking at is what are all your information resources, right? So you're not just talking about servers and technical things. Cybersecurity I would look at more as being a domain within the context of information security.
Right.
And now we have the concept of privacy, which has all of a sudden become a big issue and is infecting security and is a part of it works hand to hand with security, but it's different in the sense where information security is really the practice of best practices to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. So that would be firewalls, that would be endpoints, that would be training, so your employees don't give up information over the phone, or education on and creating rules of engagement, like don't be out at the bar drinking, talking about the customer deal in the bar when there's all kinds of people around really loud, or having creating it becomes a culture, right? And so like we always think about it like IT security is a word that gets thrown around, and we often go, okay, it's cybersecurity, pass it to the IT team, and obviously the IT team has a big role to play in it, but so does HR. So does the board. So does the CEO. If the CEO doesn't care about security, and if the board isn't caring about, if there's no accountability as if being treated in the organization as something of importance, then what you have is really not a comprehensive security program. You may have a firewall. You may have some things. You might have a 1Password or a LastPass or something like that. You may have some tools that are certainly security tools that are reducing some of your exposure and your risk. But if you don't have a program and there's not some leadership from the top that is prioritizing it and leading by example, then you run into the fact that there are definitely holes in that situation. So it is a big. I like the octopus sort of analogy, because it is really a big thing. And this is why I think a lot of it, when we think about security, security is often benchmarked against standards and practices, things like ISO 27001, SOC 2, Center for Internet Security, NIST standards, the list goes on. And most of these standards have historically been written for large, complex corporate entities. So they can be a lot for business people who are not security people.
Right.
Sorry, I had to take the break there.
No problem.
The air in there. I mean, it's the type of thing that it can be very overwhelming to look at when you look at a control set with hundreds of security controls. And so it's a big beast, and it's something that unfortunately a lot of small companies are not thinking about it until they have to.
Exactly.
When in reality, it's the type of thing that if you start it really at the beginning, and this is this concept in privacy law that's called security by design. If you start thinking about things with security from day one, you're essentially making it a lot easier than if you do all your agreements, you do your employee agreements, you build your onboarding processes without security, you design your applications without security in mind, you build your architecture, you write code, lines upon lines of code without proper secure methodologies and testing in there. Then when it comes time to secure, you've got all this technical security debt and cultural security that you now have to go back and correct. So it's really tough. We get companies a lot that come in with their hair on fire because, oh my God, I got the biggest deal of my life on the line here, and they just sent us a questionnaire with 287 questions, and I don't know half of the means. You think we can get this back to them in a week?
We need this by Friday.
You could just send it back to them right now.
But, hey, no, thanks. Yeah, we tried. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a big, but I love these really big, hairy problems most of the days. Like I'm always really jealous, and I'm like, what, Slack? Like it's a a chat application and it's doing that well. Like, why couldn't I come up with an idea that was just
Exactly.
we're going to do one
It's
thing?
electronic Post-it note. I mean, come on. How detailed can this be? You
No.
mentioned something really interesting about the idea of companies not thinking about it until it's almost either it's too late or like too late because they can't get all the information in for a proposal, or they've actually been hacked, and it's
Yeah.
after the fact they're going, well, now we've been hacked and we thought we would never be a target. Why are we a target? We're such a small fish in a huge ocean. Why would anybody want to attack, our systems or information or anything like that? And another thing with product market fit, I mean, I'm thinking of, you mentioned it's kind of like for, say, small to medium sized businesses. How many of them are really even budgeting for services like this? Or, when you send them the proposal, they're going, how much?
Yeah.
Can
You
I
know
just
what?
like encrypt my hard drive, or something like that?
I'm seeing a difference in the last within the last couple of months. Honestly, I feel like that companies are becoming more mature. There's more conversations happening. There's more news about security. There's more investors are talking about it. There's a lot of board members are bringing it up in smaller organizations because the word's getting out. I mean, the reality is hacking is a real business. It's a black market enterprise that far surpasses the global illicit drug trade. So it is the leader of criminal activity, the amount of money that's generated in the black market from all kinds of different activities in cyber are extreme. And there's careers out there to be had in the illegal trade or in the legal business of being a hacker. And it doesn't matter where you live, as long as you have a computer and you have access to the internet, any target is a viable target. And so, when you see like the sophistication level of the large corporations in terms of them bringing up the sophistication of their cybersecurity, it means that, well, the hackers are out there making money. It's getting harder to hack some of these bigger entities. So it's time to move down and create new targets. And like really any industry, and you'll actually find hackers will go out in the same way that as a startup, we think about, okay, we got to find our target market. We got to build a strategy. We have to understand the persona. Like a lot of these hacks, a lot of these activities are not just technical pursuits, right? A lot of social engineering is involved in this. And now you're in a world where you get like RAS, ransomware as a service. So, it's not about, you don't have to be this technical genius to be a hacker. You can learn about it in the dark web. You can access tools in the dark web, and you can buy tools with Bitcoin or whatever on the dark web. There's even hackers for hire. You could just be like, I want this guy hacked. I just whatever, ruin his Facebook. I don't know, take down his business page on his big launch tomorrow. Like that exists out there in the world, right? So, and I think when you look at something like COVID and you've got economic hard times in a variety of parts of the world, you've got people sent home that have the skills, and at the end of the day, if you can't put food on your table for your family, all of a sudden, all bets are off. Right?
Yep. And if you got a computer, you got internet access. Yeah.
And for a lot of us, it's hard to imagine that, but you think some of these, there's actually call centers that are engaging, and there's been some that have been busted in the last couple of years in various Interpol operations where like full call centers. I mean, there's this thing happening in Canada right now. It's like Canada Revenue Agency. This is your last notice. And then you hear that I listen just because I love hearing what these people are up to. So I'm like, yeah, what's up? How can I help you? And you listen, it sounds like they're in a call center. This is not like somebody sitting at home. It's literally a call center. So, I mean, it's a big, huge business. It's very difficult to get caught. Like sending data over borders or hacking people over borders using Bitcoin, using Tor, using VPNs is much less risky than trying to jump on a plane with a kilo of coke,
absolutely,
in your body, right? So, it is a very accessible black market industry that gives you access to be able to take money fraudulently from anyone, anywhere in the world.
Well, we're the whole idea behind Rising Tide Startups is just kind of hearing the startup story and maybe the progression of the company, since it was founded. So when did you start Securicy, and kind of walk us through the early years?
Yeah, I would say it was about June 2016 when I really started thinking about the idea and started talking to a couple of friends and people I knew that worked in startups.
Had you exited?
No, I hadn't exited, but I was working on the exit. I had some good conversations. I felt confident about the exit. That caused some other challenges, but that's a whole other story. But found my co-founder, Laird Wilton, who I'd worked with in the past. He had done some sales work with Mercado for several years. He led the sales team, and so he actually took I would say it would have been about November or December 2016 that he started working on this full time. And for me, it was him, and then we had a few other early people that came in, just sort of playing a little bit of Wizard of Oz, making a website, tested messaging, like not really gun-ho on it per se, but playing around with the idea. And I would sort of pick at it a little bit with them on evenings and weekends, but was essentially running another company at the time. And then it was in 2018 that we sold Mercado, and that I made the dive, full time in. Would have been I guess late October 2018 that we sold Mercado, that deal closed, and then I jumped into Securicy full time.
So like sold it on Friday, and by Monday you're working for this new startup.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say during this 8 months of due diligence or whatever it was for Mercado, like I was really burning the candle at both ends. Like because now we had basically taken on some pre-seed money. We had made, that thing, you raise money, you're all happy, you have a drink about it, you high five, everyone's excited, and then you wake up the next day like, remember all those things we told them we were going to do? We got to do that stuff now, right?
Somebody's expecting us to deliver.
Yeah,
on this.
the party's not over.
That's exactly right.
So,
exactly right.
And so that was a tough go doing that. It was super relieving when the deal finally closed, and I was able to dive in full time. So that, 2019, that's when we launched the product in, I think it was March or April 2019. I mean, it wasn't ready really, but there's this point where you kind of have to you have to do something. You have to start selling things. You have to, you need customers. You can't, we had beta customers and alpha from very early when we had absolutely nothing, but we needed more feedback. We needed more diversity in the feedback. We needed to start learning how to sell the idea of solving the problem the way with our vision of how we saw solving the problem. But it took a while. Like I would say it was a slow go at first. We were lucky with our network to be able to get a lot of good deals out of just people we knew, a lot in the event space, stuff like that, relationships. And then really, 2020, it was like 2020 started, we were really starting to figure things out. We had brought in a lot of help. We had gotten a lot of different outside feedback. We were starting to figure out what we needed to do. Right. And then COVID hit, and then that was kind of hit us pretty hard. Like we had a lot of, like I was saying, a lot of the event companies that were struggling, and a lot of the momentum, right? We were starting to get a momentum, and it hit, and that was pretty terrifying. But we got through it, and we didn't have to let anybody go. In fact, it was kind of freaky. We hired a bunch of people right before COVID became I wouldn't say before it started, but before we accepted it as humans in North America. Reality. and we managed to hold on to everybody. Everybody worked really hard through it. We transitioned to work from home, which we're now full-time work from home. Pretty much love it. Lifestyle wise, opens our mind to we hire now the best people we can find that really gel with the team. We don't have to think about geographic limits and cultures and subcultures of that.
Or even convincing people to move to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, which is really easy to do now because we've got this COVID bubble and there's barely any cases of COVID, and we still get to go to bars and restaurants and things like that, unlike other parts of Canada right now. So it's actually it's an easier sell right now to sell people coming to Nova Scotia than it was before. But and then I would say the last couple of months really picking up a stride and seeing things come back. And we've been having some of the best months we've ever had as a company consecutively for the last couple of months. Great momentum. And we're hiring other positions. We're interviewing now. We've got a bunch more positions coming on over the next couple of weeks. So things are in a good spot, and
definitely growth mode.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. You kind of go through this pit of despair because I think and even especially coming out of as a second time entrepreneur, I just think I had maybe a little bit of ego that oh yeah, I did this before. I'm just going to do this and this. We'll build a website marketing plan. And, oh yeah, we know how to sell. We'll dial this. And you get in there and you start doing things, and you think you look one way, but you look the other way, and you expect people to see it. you're like, wow, this is really hard. And then you get into the pit of despair. It's like 12 months of trying to make up really nice stories to your investors of why those hockey stick numbers that you pitched to them, 8 months ago aren't looking so hockey stick like. Unless somebody like knocked the hockey stick down, right? And that's a really tough time, but I feel like we really gelled on it, and the team really pulled together. We got a phenomenal team. It's mostly Nova Scotian, but we actually have a growing Boston group of folks there that comes from our relationship we built when we did Techstars Boston in 2018. So
all those Southerners from Boston they're adding a little DNA. They're deepening the gene pool of your startup for sure.
You got it. Yeah.
So tell me, what does it look like as far as growth? I mean, percentage wise, are you growing 10% a month? You've been growing, 3x since you started, and I mean, what does it kind of look like?
I'd say it looks a little bit like a 20% a month over month the last couple of months, but I don't want to jinx that. It's when I play that over as a straight hockey stick, it looks pretty phenomenal. But what I can say about that though is like I really feel like we understand what we need to do to keep that momentum going. I mean, you can't keep that growth because obviously, like, adding 100K in new ARR in 1 month is one thing, but adding 500K, like one salesperson, you have to scale that operation on the marketing side, on the SDR side, the sales side, the onboarding, the support, right? So that's really where our headspace is right now, is scaling, being able to take what we've learned and document it and clean that up and create more repeatable processes. But we have tremendous team, we have tremendous board and outside help. That's been great, and we're feeling pretty strong about how that goes. I'd say we'll probably raise our first institutionally led round of capital in the next calendar year. So just still figuring out what that looks like, and it's it's challenging when you're running out of money. It's really easy to raise capital because it's the only thing you can do to survive. You're just like, we got to raise money or we're going to be out of money. But when you're in a growth stage, there's like there's tough decisions around raising capital because raising capital is a big time consuming endeavor, and right now I'm gas pedal to the gas in the sales world as well, helping support the sales team and really drive that. So you don't want to get sucked into a 6-month fundraise process and have that affect the momentum. At the same time, when you have something in the market and the opportunity is big and you got something that works, you want to be able to start recruiting those people, right, to be able to move faster.
Sure. So hang on one second.
Yep.
So I guess you started with kind of the friends and family round to kind of get this rolling, or was this more, kind of self-funded when you first started, or what was the initial kind of kickstart?
It was really friends and family, like people we knew that had money that did seed type investments. We just raised initially we raised a really small amount, and that was just to put salaries for a couple of people to just play around with the idea for the first year. And then we raised a little bit more on notes when we were in Techstars, and then after we got out of Techstars, we raised again. We extended that out, just sort of modified the terms to make them a little more favorable for us. And it was all investors that invested in my last company for the most part, people we met during Techstars Boston, entrepreneurs down in Boston. But then we got and a couple of these micro funds that write smaller checks.
Yeah.
There was, so that was kind of really how that was done. And I liked it doing that way because those types of rounds, they just seem to be easier and they close faster. And you're not in a position where you've got a board member from a VC firm where you've sold them a vision for your company now sitting on the board. Because at that stage, you're still kind of figuring it out, right? And like, changes will happen in your business. And I think like for me to go out and raise a proper institutionally led round where a VC is very likely going to take a 20% or more stake in your business, end up sitting on your board, that type of thing. Really want to know that I'm selling something that we have data to back, and because I think too, like, you want to be aligned with your investors. So if you're thinking you're going to build a lifestyle business or you're going to build a business that's like 10 people and you're going to have like, maybe a couple of hundred customers, then like you don't want a VC on your board and have all this money and all these promises because you have a misaligned partner, right? So
Yep.
I think it's good if you don't know entirely where you're going with things to be a little bit careful. And I think that bootstrap time frame to really figure out your business helps you make sure that, because an investor is not just somebody who gives you money and then disappears.
Right. They
They're
have a
really there
vested
with you.
interest. Yeah.
Until you either sell the company, IPO, or pass away, or go into business, and they are there and they're part of your life, part of your work, and part of your business. So you really want to make sure that what they define as a success, you ultimately and truly in your own heart are looking and believe you're pushing the business that way. Like I see
Right.
these entrepreneurs all the time that are like, they'd sell for $5 million tomorrow, but they're telling their VCs they're making $1 billion company because that's what everybody tells them that they need to say to get VC. And it's like, you want to make sure that you're bringing in investors that are happy with the outcome you're driving the ship towards.
Yep. Yep. Is it a space that's easy to raise money in right now because it's kind of a hot commodity?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hot. There's lots of people that are interested. It's also a very noisy space as well. So, I think you
But
need
is
to
that
be.
at the enterprise level? Is that the kind of the major players that are making all the noise? Or are you talking about a lot of like startups that are, kind of small that are just kind of trying to get rolling?
Everything. I mean, you
Okay.
got the enterprise players that are moving down market because there's opportunities for them to scale down market. You've got all kinds of startups popping up in every area of security, specialized by industry, by compliance standard. You've got compliance software, you've got privacy software, you've got all these AI ML type, like advanced cyber tool. Like there's just it's crazy. Like, and that's the one thing that, like, I remember being into my co-founder and I were talking about this, like when we were running Mercado, it's like I knew every company pretty much in the space. In fact, most of them I've had drinks with their founders and I knew all about them. We had integrations with a lot of players. Like, you feel kind of big fish in a little pond. Like you know the waters, what's around the corner more in a small niche space. And this is such a bigger beast for me than anything that I've ever been in, that it's like sometimes it can be overwhelming. And it's just, but then you realize like, wow, all these competitors are out there, and like, but yet, we're closing a deal every second day and it's a good deal. And like, so like, don't worry too much about that. Let's talk like, focus, customers, right? People obsess about competition. And I think you need to understand what's going on out there for sure. But like, in my mind, like every time I see another company pop up that looks like it can be a competitor, I don't treat it like one until our salespeople start like coming to me and going, "Oh, we're hearing more about these guys, right?"
Right.
Then they're a competition, right? Then they're engaged in the conversation, and like, you want to understand when you lose against them why, but like not getting obsessed about their marketing material. Be like, "Oh, look at all this stuff they have." Like, yeah, they probably don't have all that stuff. And a lot of it probably sucks. Go look at our website. You think everything we have is the perfect, ideal endpoint solution? This is it's early stage. It's building a new space, so it's really, but it's exciting because there are. The interesting thing about it is companies that never thought about this stuff before, companies I never even would have thought of, like that are doing this, small 4-person consulting shops that are being put through due diligence to do small contracts for an upper mid-market company. Like it's really like there's a lot of greenfield out there. So that's the part of it that's exciting. And I think like it's taken us a little bit, but I'm really feeling now that we understand what we can do very uniquely and very special, and we're doing it really well. And we're really focusing. Like we're not, when a company comes in, they got 2,000 employees. You think it will work for us? No, absolutely not. Like, part of you wants to go, yes, how much can I charge you for it? But we just really focus on the small businesses. We know that culture. We know the tools they use. We know the challenges, and it just enables us to be so much stronger. And do such a great job for each one of those companies.
What's one thing that you think if you knew this in 2019, it would have made your life a lot easier right now? What's one thing right now that you look back and you think, man, I wish I would have known this. It would have made that hockey stick a little more, acute, up and to the right.
Yeah, I mean, there. I would say the biggest one that I wish I had in 2019 was just to realize that people don't buy software because they're looking to solve a security problem generally. Especially when you're very much on the high level of the security program and you're very much at the governance point and sort of like a central point. They're not really they're not looking for software. They have a problem. The problem is they don't have a good security posture. Their customers need them to have that, and they want to have that. However, that they may have varying degrees of understanding of what the possible routes are to get there, and there's more than one way to get to that place. But I think we were just so focused on like, oh, we're SaaS, like, you know, product, like, you know, you start thinking like talking what you think the VCs want, or what you know the story your VCs want. You start, oh well, we're gonna be careful with the service, like that's not scalable. And the thing about security is there's a human element to it, and I think that if you have the human element dialed and you're able to really have the software deliver the results, but you're able to have the humans that can help the executive leadership in the company understand what it is they need to do, and that's where you create success. And in some ways there's a bit of a challenge to that, because you may have to confront them, and I do this all the time, like your perspective of how you want to do this is faulted, and here's why. And that may mean that you don't want to work with me because you don't like me telling you what you should be doing, and if that's how you feel, then that's okay, because you're bringing us on because we know this stuff, and we do this every day. And I'm going to make this a lot easier for you if you listen. And generally the customers that we like are the ones that they're hiring you and paying your premium fee for your expertise. Therefore, when you're exercising your expertise, they are approaching it with an open mind. And, you know, I think we started just stuffing software in people's face, like, here, buy this, it'll solve all your problems. And it solved a lot of problems, but it didn't solve all the problems. And then when we started realizing and understanding, like, bringing in experts that would run companies through their processes, and seeing what other cybersecurity experts that have been practitioners doing this for a very long time, being able to build systems and build the software more intuitively and change the perspective of what is success. Is success how many clicks in your software and the engagement and all this crap you can read blogs about, you know, what a software company should be measuring as far as success? Or is success that the customer came to you, they had a problem, and now they don't have that problem, right? And so, and that was the perspective, and that paradigm shift for us has changed the way we look at everything we do, and it's changing the way we're building the software, and it's changing the way we're servicing the software, and it's really making an awesome difference.
Are your customers, is this like a just-in-time purchase, or is this almost I know that we need this, and we're just going to incorporate this as part of our build out? I mean, I can almost say, you know, as you were saying, if you present me with software, like this is going to fix, I don't maybe not even understand I've got the problem. You know, you're trying to sell me a solution to something that I don't even know that I have a problem. But if I need this contract, if I need this done for this proposal, or if I understand I've got a you know, a hole in my security or whatever, then just in time I need somebody to fix that, you know, type thing, versus, you know, we can make you secure moving forward so you don't have to deal with these things, which is the more common in your
generally, I would say
process.
Founder coming in with hair on fire because they have the big deal on the table and they need to jump through all the hoops, right? And generally what the discovery is, they don't have a hole in their security. They have like thousands of little holes in their security. And essentially there isn't really security.
Right.
So, you know, there might
mesh.
be, there's inherited security from various things that you may do, or that people may have the insight to just do, like, hey, we should have more than like my dog's name for a password, or maybe we should use two-factor authentication. Like, there are things that people do, but generally there's a lack of security there. I would say that's still pretty popular. I would say though, there's definitely an increase in us talking to organizations that have a realistic vision, and that's where they're like, hey, we know that the world is changing. We know there's privacy regulations popping up all over the place, states, provinces, countries, etc. We know that this is something customers are asking us more. We know we're moving into this space. They're seeing it as like, hey, we want to be compliant with this in 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to start now because we don't want to wait till it's too late. And the
Right.
truth of the matter is, like, if you got a sales process going with a customer and you're back and forth and you're quick and you're responsive and all that, and then the security questionnaire comes and it's crickets while you're scrambling within for a week trying to figure out how to BS your way through this questionnaire, the security auditors generally see that right away. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, you're not tricking them.
That's a big red flag too.
The red flag. And
Yeah.
now it's like, and I have conversations all the time with startup founders that are almost defensive about it. Well, I mean, we're an AWS, and like, what do you mean, like security tools? Like, it's like, don't talk like that to your customer. That you're demonstrating your naivety in the fact that you actually don't understand what running a secure enterprise grade company is. And therefore they're going, okay, doesn't believe that they thought because they were in AWS that they didn't have to do anything else. Doesn't
Earth
know
is flat.
Earth is flat. Exactly.
Yes.
Right. And so that is being assessed when you do that. So, and that's not, and then it comes down to a conversation where that auditor is not making the decision whether or not the company is going to use your product or
Right.
service. That auditor is going to go, okay, I rate them at this.
Yep.
They don't run a pen test. Their application security is weak. They don't have a security leader. They don't have awareness training. They don't have written documented policies. They don't understand. I give them this score of really not good score, however model or methodology they use. It's going to be like an E or an F or a 52 or
27
whatever.
out of 100.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's try again. And then they're going to go back to senior management and they're going to pass that back to whoever's the decision making on the process. And then it's going to be a conversation of, well, is the reward that, I don't know, the marketing department is getting from this CRM tool, for example, is it worth these risks that are being presented? And that may either mean, and for us, and I still remember this hard day, we had a really big deal at Mercado. It would have been the biggest deal we ever signed. And they came back and said, yeah, we're not allowed to work with you guys. This was a signed deal. This company was like, we need it. Like, when can we onboard? Can we start onboarding now while you guys are doing the security audit? Like, we had already celebrated the biggest win in our company. And their owner came back and said, yeah, you guys can't use this. And so, and when it was time to come back next year for the next season, and when we finally got it together, it was too late. The window had closed. They had moved on to some other way to solve the key pain points in that agreement. So, it's not something to leave last minute. We're going to wait till we're $2 million in ARR. Well, it's going to take you a lot longer to get there if you wait. And then, it
costs you more to do it then.
It's so affordable. Like, we have companies that come in and spend like $5,000 in a year and build the basics. Now, I'm not going to say they're walking out with a SOC 2 audit or an ISO 27001 audit, but they're implementing proper practices. They're implementing policies. They're thinking about this. They're building their business. When when their lawyer comes in and drafts up an employee agreement, they have a list of things from us or from our application that says, hey, you want to cover all these things, hand this off to your lawyer when you get through these drafts. And, all this type of stuff, they're getting that in place. They're building a secure app. They're starting proper testing and they're getting into proper hygiene from day one. So their team is, they're not going to be in a situation where they got to go back and clean up, for 3 months, clean up a bunch of holes. Right. So, I mean, it's changing. And those are definitely like, we love all the customers that come in. Like, sure, there's companies that come in with their hair on fire. They'll do whatever it takes to close that deal. And then once the deal closes, they'll go back to doing whatever it is. And they don't log into the app for 4 months. And then another customer comes in, oh no. And then after that happens a few times, they're like, okay, we just need to do this regularly. But there's more and more companies that are thinking about it more intelligently. And I think too, I think it helps, like I was saying earlier, board members and investors that are talking about it more. So, you go to your board meeting, we spent $50,000 on cybersecurity. Like, I think 10 years ago as a startup, or even 5 years ago as a startup, there'd be a lot of boards that are like, wait a minute, whoa, we're not even at $1 million in revenue. You guys are like, what do we need all this security stuff for, right? And that fallacy's gone for the most part, and that naivety's been lifted for the most part. And so companies are starting to have the bandwidth, and this is the type of stuff that more connected
Sure.
VCs and board members are planting these seeds in companies earlier.
All right. That and certainly kind of helps you navigate, or helps them navigate that space better, and you can kind of walk them through that from a much more knowledgeable standpoint.
And we can walk them through it from the perspective of, we know, like, we're a startup too, or we're a small business too, right? Like,
right.
Versus, like, there's a lot of companies out there where you've got these security guys that have done their whole career in a 10,000 person or 5,000 person company, or, the Big Four or something like that. And, like, it's different. I'm not saying that they don't have skills and talent. They have a ton of skills and talent, but, the language that you use and policies, the tools that companies use, like, most of our startups aren't using Active Directory. They're probably in Google or something like that. And, like, everything about it can be a little different. So being very specialized in these small, either technical companies like software companies or tech-enabled service companies. Like, we have a lot of companies that, you build on Salesforce platform and build on other platforms or things like that, right? Like, we understand their business. We know we're looking at these security questionnaires all the time. So you come to me and say, we're selling to Target. Well, I know what selling to Target looks like. I know what selling to Disney looks like. We can really help you and get to that position, and we can help you understand, like, what decisions you make in your product and how they affect that. Because the risk assessment also looks not only just at your security posture when you're being asked those questions in an engagement, but also there's a difference in the tolerance of risk. If, say, hey, they're going to get a bunch of SKUs for a million things and products, but they're not going to there's going to be no, like, address and phone number and, like, confidential information, sex thing. They're not going to have a religion. They're not going to have all this stuff, health information. Then the risk tolerance can, there can be a different risk tolerance, right?
Manage it differently. Yeah.
But then you decide, hey, we're going to now add phone numbers and email addresses, and we're going to add your
whole new ball
shirt
game
size, and, like, then the ball game changes. And so the things, and if you have that awareness in your organization, you have that culture of security, then when you're innovating and thinking about what you're doing in your product, you're like, okay, well, we're going to need to talk to this person. We're going to have to see, like, does that mean that we're going to have to think more differently about GDPR now because we're adding this PI in here, or whatever that is, right? So, and if you don't have that and you're navigating that blindly, which, unfortunately a lot of, like, startups and smaller businesses are, you can end up in some trouble for sure. I think what we see more when people do get hacked a lot, people don't share when they get hacked if they don't have to, and legally you normally have to, depending on certain factors. But for the most part, it's getting more and more illegal to hide the fact that there's been a breach. And sometimes companies don't know they have a breach, because if you have no security tools, no log management, then, like, somebody comes in, they get their stuff, they leave it, they stash it in with a bunch of other information from 20 other, 50 or 100 other companies they've hacked, and it gets sold as some random name database in the dark web. Then you might not know for a long time or ever that you've been hacked.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot there for sure.
It's an amazing journey, and I feel like I'm carving into your Tim Ferriss weekend here, if I just keep asking questions. But I just love the kind of the way you walked us through the backpack trekker to troubadour to tech startup, the whole pathway, and just the kind of the diverse nature of your background that's kind of led to today. And I'm just anxious to circle back with you in 12 months and see what it looks like and how different, this next 12 months have been. Hopefully, on the back end of COVID and markets coming back to it as they're, whatever that new normal looks like, that you're kind of operating within. But man, I just appreciate you taking the time today just to kind of share the story of Securicy. Anxious to see what happens in the future. But Darren, just thank you for playing your part in just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks. Take care.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.